eternal God, we're so thankful for the gift of your word spoken to us here today. We're so thankful for the gift of being able to gather here as your body. Help us to be nourished by this time together and live it out as we go from here today. We ask this in your name. Amen. Amen. Please be seated. I've had a little vacation from preaching, so I've had a little break for the past couple of weeks. We've had some great words spoken, though. It's been really great. But I wanted to just say that I'm super psyched to be back in the saddle again with this particular story. You know, sometimes you think, oh no, what's this? What do I do with this one? But I'm psyched about the story of Jesus feeding those thousands of people that day. It's the only miracle that's told in all four Gospels, and it's actually told twice in Matthew, in a way. So anyway, there's some interesting stuff that's here, and the thing that sort of I uncovered from looking at reading this passage from Matthew is that there are three different sort of contrasting sort of images or experiences that are throughout this. So maybe we can kind of unpack that a little bit. There are two meals that are kind of contrasting. There's two perspectives that are contrasting, and then really two perspectives or ideas of inclusion that are contrasting. Okay, so first of all, this idea of two contrasting meals. See, the one that starts off this passage that we have is that Jesus, when he heard this, he left and went out to be alone. Well, the thing that he heard was the fact that his cousin John the Baptist had been killed. He had been beheaded by Herod. And that came from as a result of another meal that John the Baptist was really the victim of. It was a meal where Herod had manipulated manipulated people to try to get things his way, and it ended up in death. Think about that meal where John the Baptist ended up, well, he wasn't there, but he ended up losing his life because of the manipulation and all the stuff going on with Herod. And then this meal that we have here told in pretty much detail about the Jesus feeding all these thousands of people. We think about these two contrasting things. That meal that Herod held was all about wealth and who had wealth. It was all about manipulation. It was all about status, who sat where, who did what who was doing in charge of what. It was about excess. You could just hear the story about all the different excessive things that are in that. It was about violence and death. That's what that was all about. But then contrasting it with this story that we have with Jesus feeding these thousands of people, it's a bunch of regular, ordinary people. It's about compassion and recognizing and feeding people who are hungry. It's about sharing, it's about healing, and it's about abundance and welcome. So think about these two contrasting experiences, two fundamentally different versions of human community. Sadly, I think in our society today, just as back a couple thousand years ago, a lot of our society is all about the kind of meal that Herod was holding, that Jesus had heard about, sparking him to go have this other meal. That sometimes, I don't know if you've ever been to one of those meals where you have to sit down and everybody's at a certain place, or this person sits here and that person sits there. Which in the world, what fork do I use? I have no idea. Things like that. Or afraid of being criticized and things like that because of all that kind of pressure around it. Sadly, I feel like that sometimes is what our society tries to hold up, that we're a society of order or something, or where somebody has a pecking order, or it's about wealth, or it's about things like that, or about excess, or about status. But really, I think our Christian image really comes from this meal, where thousands of people were fed abundantly. And just couldn't help but think about our lunches that we have here, after church each week. I mean, I think we're a bunch of good little group of people. We may not have thousands and thousands of people, but we sure got a lot of people that are here together. And we share this meal together. And it's kind of miraculous, really, when you think about it. I mean, look around this room. We all come from all kinds of different places and do all kinds of different things, and we live our life in different ways. But it's all celebrated here around this meal that we have. Everybody's welcome. And whether you use a plastic fork or a metal fork or whether you don't use a fork at all, whatever. I mean, it's all the different things that we're all part of this meal here together. And I think that's the real image of what that's all about. So really, I think I should probably just be quiet and let our lunch today just preach for itself. That this is the way that we live our Christian life. A life of sharing life with one another. Looking at each other eye to eye, not about status. Looking at each other and accepting where each other comes from. Not about some sort of excess thing and what do you have and what don't you have. But about here we are together, loving one another, sharing one another, and knowing and praising the fact that our loving God is here with us each day. The second perspective, or contrast, I think that I see here in this reading, are two perspectives that really are pretty different. A perspective on scarcity and a perspective on generosity that seem to kind of conflict here. So it's interesting that when they realize that all these people that they've come out to the area there, out to the wilderness, are all kind of worried because, well, how are they going to eat? What's going to happen? The apostles' answer is, let them go back, let them deal it for themselves. Let them go figure it out for themselves. Kind of send them away because we can't do it. Let them put the burden back on them. I think sometimes when we have this feeling of scarcity, like, oh, there's a scarcity of housing, or we feel like there's a scarcity of food for people, or there's a scarcity of resources for others, we end up blaming the other people and saying, it's your fault, you should have done it for yourself. You go out and get a job because you don't have a home or something, whatever people say. But that's not it. We're not about sending people away. We're thinking about how can we include them. There's not an idea of sending away. So thank goodness Jesus says, hey, you do something about it. Hey, apostles, you get it together, you figure it out. So it's interesting, their response is, we have nothing. We have nothing. That's their first line, but we do have these fish and bread here. It's kind of interesting, though. It is a bit minimal. When you think about it, you've got thousands and thousands of people. And then the bread that they've got, actually the word that's in Greek really is the bread that's fed only to people in poverty. That was that, because like cheap, super cheap, like barley bread. That was only for people that were sort of the lower class at that time. And fish kind of must have been some dried up fish yuck in the desert, who knows. But anyway, it wasn't a lot to work with. But Jesus said, let's do something with this. He said, let's build on this strength that we have. Let's build on this gift that we have. Let's not just be so caught up in the scarcity of the issue, but let's be caught up in the generosity that somebody brought forth these few pieces of bread, because probably all they had, and bring forth this little bit of fish, even though it's not much. Let's really try to do something with it. So Jesus then turns it into this amazing thing, like I said, that's in all four Gospels, that's used in stories over and over. It's a great image for all kinds of things. It's an amazing event that has happened in the Christian story. But here Jesus is saying, not acknowledging that it's nothing. He's saying there is something here. I can't help but think about times of working in social work, the work that I've done for my life, and can't help but think about a particular image. Okay, say I'm working at a school. And the parents come to me as a school social worker, for instance, and say, hey, my child has difficulty getting to school. We're worried about his truancy. So he did not go to school 3 days last week. And we're all worried about it. He didn't go 3 days. So then what should really be my first question? Well, what did you do wrong on those 3 days? No. What went right on those 2 days? What worked on those 2 days that we can build on and really go from there? There's something got him there those 2 days. What can we do to build on that? So here I think Jesus is kind of doing the same thing. He's recognizing, okay, we've got a little something here. What can we build on? Let's make it happen. So I think that's an amazing thing to think about for our life, on how we live out our life. How do we build on the strength that we have? I know sometimes maybe we think, well, all I've got is a couple loaves of bread and a couple of dried up fish in my own life or in my own resources, so I have nothing to offer, or I have nothing to share, or really, who's going to really acknowledge me in any kind of way? But wow, every little thing that we've got in our life, the Spirit that lives in us, that's an amazing gift that we can offer and that we can share and make this world a better place. If they had just said, oh, never mind, bread's not good enough, fish too dried up, let's just send everybody away, well, then we wouldn't have this great story to know of Jesus' power and Jesus' love and what that was all about. So let's recognize the strengths and the things that we've got to be able to build on. Let's not look at life as scarcity. How am I going to squeeze out this little thing? But how can I build on what I've got and let the love of God in me shine through the people that I come in contact with? One other thing that kind of came to mind with this was actually a story I saw on the news. It's a guy that works at airports. And so he's working at the airport, and he's done this for like 10, 11 years. He goes out around and finds tags that were lost off of people's luggage. And because they have their address on it, he mails it back to them on his own dime. He does this, and he mails it back to people. And sometimes they write him back thank you notes and things like that. I mean, I don't know if you've ever heard anything like that where you just lose something. Well, it was interesting. So I kind of thought, well, the luggage tag, who cares? But it really meant something to a lot of the people that he mailed it back to. Like somebody that had gone on a special trip, or maybe it had been a gift from somebody that was now gone, or things like that. It was just a really cool kind of thing. Here's this little bitty thing that probably he could have just walked over or stepped on, even on the concrete there at the airport. But he said, I'm really going to do something for this and respond to people in a way. I think that's building on something little and really making a strength out of something that maybe other people wouldn't have ever have thought of. I think that's an amazing story that kind of fits really well. The third image I think that we could think about are the two contrasting things that are here, are ideas of inclusion. Two ideas of inclusion. One, our goal being exclusion, and the second being our idea of inclusion. What is that? What's going on here? Well, it's interesting that an exclusive way of describing what's going on is that there were 5,000 men. There were only 5,000 men. And that's what the headline goes. In fact, if you talk about this story, it's always, it's the feeding of the 5,000. Well, what about all the women and the children and the other people that were there? Jesus was touched by all the people. Society or the culture may have only counted a segment of the group that were there that day. But Jesus' compassion, his heartfelt feeling about all this, was really moved by all the people that were there. In fact, it says all were fed. All were fed. All were filled. All were satisfied. It's not just some of the people, or the people that got there first, or the people that had the best outfits, or the people that had the most money to give forth. It was everybody, all fed. Even though they're sort of only acknowledging some people, it's everybody that was fed. And that's what it's about. All count. All people count. I think that maybe this idea or this story sort of calls back in our history of oftentimes who's gotten to tell the story. Well, it's been this certain class of people, or this certain section of people, or this certain race of people, or whatever that are telling the story. But so many people have been kind of silently or unheralded ways that our country's been built by the work and the dedication and love that they've been able to do. I think about people sitting at counters, people sitting at tables, people sitting in protest throughout our history to try to make a statement that all should be included. That's what we are called to do as Christians, to really think about what can we be as all of us together. All people count. That means all voices, it means all ideas, all people, all votes. All of us count in this community that we live in and that we share. So I think maybe if we can go from here today and recognize that every aspect of my life counts and is valuable and is worthwhile, then I can live as Christ is calling me to live. So when we think about the community that's been shaped and created by that meal a couple thousand years ago, I think sometimes we're sort of tempted to say, oh wow, that was a really cool trick. He took a little bit and fed a bunch of people. What a cool magic trick that was. But that's not the point at all. The point really is that the reality is that we are called to build a community of love and of sharing, a community where it's a meal where all people are included, where it's a perspective that's not about scarcity but about generosity, and where we're building a life that's about not exclusion but inclusion. Just as we're gathering here together today, Jesus did the exact same thing. He took the bread, he blessed the bread, he broke it and shared it. We're going to do the same thing here in just a little bit. We're going to take some bread, we're going to bless the bread together, we're going to break it, and then we're going to share it with each other. We're doing that exact same thing here together today. And so let's be filled with that nourishment, that bread, that life that we're called to know, and let it live out our life, a life of inclusion, a life of generosity, and a life of just living in community together. Amen? Amen.